A prejudiced police officer spots a black woman rummaging an SUV and assumes the worst. He decides to arrest her without cause. Only later will he find out he cuffed a state attorney. Marissa Langford, 42, sharp-eyed, tired, stood in the baking lot, beads of sweat at her hairline. The black SUV sat unlocked, driver's door splayed open, while she bent over the seat, sorting folders, mail, and crumpled receipts in a frantic hunt for her missing purse. Come on, she breathed, fingers skating under the floor mat. She'd already been late when she pulled in. Now her day was unraveling. Her phone buzzed again in the cup holder. Another call from the office. Everything essential lived in that purse: wallet, ID, badge. An engine's low hum drifted closer. She straightened, glanced up, and saw a patrol cruiser, the driver watching too closely. She felt the stare grow heavier, like a hand between her shoulder blades. The cruiser rolled to a stop. A door thumped. Boots hit hot pavement. "Hey!" The voice was rough, already accusatory. Marissa straightened from the seat, palms on the doorframe, and turned. The officer, white, late 40s, jaw clenched, wore his authority like a dare. One hand hovered near his belt. "What are you doing?" Suspicion rasped through each syllable. Marissa wiped her forehead and eased back from the car. "Looking for my purse," she said, keeping it calm. "I misplaced it in here." His scowl deepened. "You got ID?" She gestured at the mess on the seat. "In the purse I'm trying to find. I'm late." "Uh-huh," he cut in. "Step away from the vehicle." She swallowed, resisted the urge to argue, and took one deliberate step back, hands visible and open. "This is my car," she said again, voice even. "I just need my wallet and I'll be gone." He didn't move. The look in his eyes mixed suspicion with something meaner. He stepped closer, posture rigid. "You expect me to believe you just lost your purse in this?" He peered inside the SUV as if theft might be printed on the upholstery. Marissa kept her tone calm. "Yes, it's mine. I'm the state attorney." One eyebrow climbed. A thin, mocking smile followed. "State attorney, huh? Got proof? 'Cause all I see is someone breaking into a car." Her jaw tightened. "My ID is in the purse I'm looking for." She nodded at the seat. "You can verify ownership in 2 minutes." He ignored the suggestion. Attention locked on her, instead of the registration inches away. Step back," he ordered, as though readiness were evidence. She knew the picture: a black woman alone, riffling through an SUV without visible ID. She knew how it read to men like him. Arguing wouldn't unwind the narrative, it would only tighten it. She breathed in, stepped farther from the door, palms open. He misread restraint as guilt. "Hands where I can see them." Metal flashed. She froze, stunned by the escalation, but refused to flinch. "Wait, this is my vehicle," she said, firm. "Run the plate." He closed the gap, grabbed her forearm, and snapped a cuff on. Cold bit skin. "You're under arrest," he said, securing the other. "Suspicion of vehicle theft." Disbelief surged hot. Her purse, somewhere inside that car, held every document he claimed to need. As he marched her to the patrol car, she looked back at the open door, anger climbing in her chest with the hum of the idling engine. The cruiser's back seat was hard and hostile, vinyl biting through her blazer. With wrists pinned behind her, Marissa steadied her breathing and watched heat ripple across the lot. Outside, the officer, Pike stamped on his nameplate, stood by her SUV, peering in with a flashlight he didn't need under a noon sun. His suspicions seemed to fatten, fed by assumptions he carried. A couple passersby slowed, stared at the black woman in cuffs, then kept walking, discomfort without courage. The rear door jerked open. Pike hauled her out and turned her to face him. "Still no ID?" he asked, disdain coiling every word. "My purse is in my car," she said, clipped but steady. "Let me retrieve it, and I'll show you everything." He shook his head, already committed to his story. "Right, and I'm the governor. You're stealing that car." "Check the registration. Run the plate," she said, meeting his stare. "Everything will match," Pike chuckled, dry and dismissive. "Registration? Background? Lady, you're trying to steal a car. Obvious." Her jaw tightened. "I'm the state attorney. He raised an eyebrow, a smirk creeping in. You can't be serious. People like you don't land jobs like that. Heat flashed in her chest. People like me? She asked, cool. What exactly do you mean? He didn't answer, stepping closer until the holster at his hip crowded her vision. Means you should stop talking. She straightened. 2 minutes to verify the truth, she said. That's all. He tipped his chin toward the car. Hands where I can see them, he repeated, as if volume could turn arrogance into evidence. The cuffs clicked when she tested them, the sound louder than the buzzing sun. Run the plates, she said again, refusing to shrink. Pike's glance turned razor sharp. You can stop talking now, he said quietly, or I'll make sure you regret it. The handcuffs bit when she tightened her fists. She swallowed the retort, burning her tongue. Men like him didn't arrive to listen. A younger officer approached, mid-20s, nervous energy, clipboard in hand. He glanced at Marissa, then at Pike. Everything okay here? Routine arrest, Pike said without looking up. She's got a story about being the state attorney. No ID. Booking for attempted vehicle theft. Marissa kept her voice firm. You haven't even checked the plates. Pike cut her a glare that could bruise. You can stop talking, he repeated lower. The younger cop shifted, uncomfortable, but said nothing. Silence once again did the damage-heavy lifting, while the sun burned holes in the afternoon. Minutes stretched thin and mean. No one hurried to verify anything. Finally, Pike announced, We'll sort it out at the station. Marissa didn't resist. The performance had gone on long enough. The cruiser door slammed. The city smeared past as they moved. She counted intersections, slowed her breath, and reminded herself that facts surface, even when people won't. But when facts come late, they carry a bill. At Central Precinct, fluorescent lights buzzed like gnats. The air smelled of coffee gone wrong and old paper. Pike steered her through booking, past officers who didn't look twice. They sat her in a gray interrogation room, engineered to make people feel small. The cuffs stayed tight. The clock ticked indifferently. Outside, footsteps and phone rings blended into institutional hum. Her anger cooled into something steadier, a resolve built from years of fighting this exact gravity. Can you at least loosen these? Marissa called across the room. They're unnecessary. Pike didn't look up from his paperwork. Sure. Sit tight. We'll get to it whenever. The sarcasm was lazy. The power play wasn't. She exhaled, counting to 5. She'd dealt with difficult officers, but this one wore disrespect, like part of the uniform. State attorney or not, he didn't care. Time dragged. Eventually, Pike strolled over, planting both hands on the table, mouth curled in a half smile. All right, state attorney, he said. Ready to come clean yet? Marissa met his eyes. I told you the truth from the start. I'm the state attorney and you've made a serious mistake. Your bias kept you from noticing. He chuckled. Bias? This is about you having no proof, acting suspicious, and giving me the same excuse I hear every week. She kept her tone even. If you run a quick background check or just check the plates, we'd be done already. Pike straightened and shook his head. Smugness lacquered on. You don't tell me how to do my job. Criminals always think they're the smartest person in the room. Lucky for you, I haven't added resisting. The cuffs dug when she flexed her fingers, metal printing crescents in her skin. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Marissa said, low but clear. When this is over, you will regret how you handled this. His smile thinned. Is that a threat? It's a prediction, she said. Facts have a way of catching up. He scoffed and turned away. Paperwork resumed, pencil scratched. The room's cheap gray pressed inward, trying to make her smaller. She refused to fit. Her anger cooled into something harder. Procedure wasn't optional, and Pike skipped it because he wanted to. The door opened. An older officer stepped in, gray at the temples, lines carved by long nights. His gaze found Marissa, paused, flashed with recognition, then shuddered. What's the situation? He asked. Just someone who thinks she's above the law, Pike said, casual again. Says she's the state attorney. The older cop's brow lifted. He looked between them, then at the file. Might be smart to run the plates, he said, neutral. I'll get around to it, Pike snorted, waving him off. Marissa held the older man's eyes. The moment stretched, an invitation to do the simplest thing in the room. After a beat, he looked away and returned to his desk. The message was clear. Inertia would keep doing what it always did, nothing. Marissa needed a phone, needed friction from outside. After what felt like an hour, Pike wandered back, grin wide. All right, princess, you want your call? Let's see what favors you can cash. He unlocked the cuffs and steered her to a scuffed landline bolted to a metal desk. Blood prickled back into her wrists like static. Make it quick, he said. She ignored him and dialed from memory. The line rang twice. Owen Carter, came a calm, precise voice. Owen, it's Marissa, she said, tone steady. A pause. A chair creaked. Where are you? I've been trying to reach you. Central Precinct, she said. I was arrested. For what? They think I was stealing my own car. Another beat. Don't say another word, he said. I'm on my way. She set the receiver down and faced Pike's smirk head on. So, Pike drawled, who's coming to save you? Your lawyer? Yes, Marissa said simply. Her wrists still ached where metal had been. She flexed them, then let her hands rest on the table. He stepped closer, narrowing his eyes like he could squeeze submission out of the air. You've got a lot of attitude for someone in cuffs. Most folks would be grateful for that call. But you think you're special. I don't think I'm special, she replied, expression even. I think you're making a mistake. He laughed, shook his head, and pushed off the wall. I'll believe that when I see it. He sauntered out, leaving her with the humming lights in a colder room. She sat again, centered her breathing, and let the anger settle into focus. Owen would arrive soon. Then facts would finally be allowed in the door. Time moved like cold syrup. The door opened and closed for everyone but her. Officers drifting past the window, glancing in, then glancing away. Curiosity without action. She rolled her shoulders and stretched her fingers, feeling pins of sensation where the cuffs had ridden. The room's 60-watt glare made even the air feel institutional. She replayed the parking lot in her head, the angle of the door, the exact spot where her purse must have slipped. She pictured the registration in the glove box, the insurance card with her name spelled, clean as daylight. 2 minutes. That's all this needed. Footsteps approached, paused, and faded again. She swallowed the bitter taste of waiting, remembering every client who had sat in rooms just like this with nobody coming. She was not naive. Power rarely apologized on its own. It had to be compelled. The door swung open. Pike reappeared with a file folder, and that same smirk, dulled a shade by boredom. He dropped into the chair opposite her and uncapped a pen. Let's make this easy. Full name, address, employment. Marissa lifted a brow. The information you could verify by checking the plate. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Humor me. Marissa Langford, she said evenly. State attorney. He clicked the pen like a metronome. Occupation jokes aren't funny. They're facts. He leaned back, boots squeaking against the floor. You know, if you'd picked a different story, lost tourist, confused cousin, you might have had me for a minute. But state attorney? Come on. Check the glove box, she said. Registration, insurance, both in my name. Pike let the silence hang, then wrote something she couldn't see. We'll see, he said like a dare. He left again, pen tapping against the folder as he went. The latch clicked like a period at the end of an insult. Marissa closed her eyes for 3 breaths, then opened them. The room looked the same, but she didn't. The fury had settled into alignment. She pictured Owen's face when he answered, the way he shifted from casual to surgical in a single heartbeat. He would come. He always did, and he brought gravity with him. Outside the glass, the corridor moved on. Coffee cups, clipped radio chatter, the familiar choreography of a place that mistakes routine for truth. A fluorescent tube flickered, then steadied, as if thinking better of going out. She flexed her wrists again and sat taller, refusing the script being written for her. Facts were slow today, but they were persistent. Soon someone would have to meet them, one way or another. The building's hum pressed on, a droning chorus of air vents, radios, and footfalls. Marissa kept her spine straight in the metal chair and watched the mirror's dark surface like it might blink. A rookie drifted past with two coffees and risked a quick look at her, then pretended he hadn't. Pike appeared in the doorway, just a silhouette and a smirk, then wandered off again as if boredom were proof. She let the stillness stretch, schooling her breath, counting 5 in, 5 out, refusing the role he kept trying to assign her. The table's edge was chewed with old scratches, little hieroglyphs of people who'd been here before, most without recourse. She thought about clients who never got a phone call answered, who never had an Owen to summon. She was angry for them, furious for herself, and entirely unwilling to let this room make her small. A different officer came in, not Pike. Stocky, tired eyes, a clipboard hugged like a shield. He asked soft questions that sounded like protocol, but landed like tests. Full name, date of birth, current employer. Marissa answered cleanly, watching for his flinch at state attorney. He didn't flinch exactly. His grip tightened on the pen. "We'll verify," he murmured, eyes slipping toward the mirror. She kept her gaze on him. "That would be refreshing." He left with a nod, and she tracked his reflection shrinking into the hall. The door side closed. She recentered, shoulders back, elbows off the table, hands loose and visible. A radio crackled somewhere, static, a street name, a parking complaint, while fluorescent light buzzed like a stubborn wasp. She pictured her purse under the passenger seat, the strap just visible if anyone bothered to look. 2 minutes, she thought. 2 minutes versus this theater. The handle clicked. Pike again. He didn't sit. He prowled a loop around the room, tracing the dingy baseboard like he owned the square footage. "So," he said, drawing it out, "you call in the cavalry?" Marissa turned just enough to meet his eyes. "I called my attorney." "Right, your imaginary boss's boss." He let out a chuckle that didn't travel far. "Here's the thing, Ms. Langford. People make up big titles when they're busted. It's cute. Won't help." She kept her face still. "The thing is, Officer Pike, lies unravel. So do assumptions." He stopped behind her shoulder, close enough to cast her in shadow. "You think posture is going to get you out of this?" "No," she said. "Facts will." Something flickered. Annoyance, maybe. He stepped around to the opposite chair. "Let's get ahead of the paperwork, Fardlitz," he said. "Confession reads better than denial." "You don't possess the leverage you think you do," Marissa replied, voice steady. "You have a narrative and a pair of handcuffs. That's it." Pike's smile thinned. "I have discretion." "Use it to run the plate," she said, "or ask your rookie to look in the glove box." He tapped the folder with a pen. "We'll get there. We should have been there an hour ago." The clock on the wall made a lazy leap forward, as if it too were tired of the dance. Pike leaned back and laced his fingers over his stomach. "Tell you what, I'll put a note in here that you cooperated. Could help." "What would help," she said, "is compliance with your own procedures." The pen stilled. He pushed up from the chair and dragged the door open with a scrape. "Back soon," he tossed over his shoulder, "unless something changes." The hallway filled with brisk voices, then thinned to murmurs. Marissa cataloged each sound without grabbing onto any of them. A phone rang. A printer coughed. Somewhere a laugh slipped out and was quickly reeled back. She unclenched her jaw and rolled her shoulders once, twice, careful not to read as restless. The mirror reflected a woman who refused to be reduced to an outline. 42 years old, countless hearings, too many nights like this, on the other side of the table, stopping the bleed of process when it went wrong. She thought about training sessions where she'd begged for better bias drills, pushed for plate first checks, fought for changes written in dry policy language to prevent exactly this. She pictured those memos gathering digital dust. Her anger folded into precision. If they needed the law spelled out, she would do it after she walked out of here unsmudged. A knock, 3 light taps, and the younger officer slid in alone. He hovered near the door, posture apologetic. Ma'am, he said, do you want water? She considered the kindness for what it was, human, small, and still something. Yes, thank you. He returned with a paper cup. His gaze kept skipping to the cuffs lying on the table like a threat set aside. You could run the plate, she said gently. He hesitated, then said what he'd been taught to say. It's not my call. It could be your integrity, she answered. Color rose in his face. He didn't argue. Ma'am, he said, I'll see what I can do. The door shut behind him before she could ask his name. She drank the water in measured swallows, savoring its ordinary mercy. Outside, the precinct's hum reset, as if the building had a metronome, and someone had tapped it straight. Time walked circles. The mirror showed nobody. The hallway offered only scraps of conversation. Then muffled words sharpened into a name she recognized. Her own. Two officers talking just outside, one voice skeptical, the other hedging. I'm telling you, that's what she said. And I'm telling you, Pike's got it. The doorknob twitched and settled. Marissa lifted her chin, letting the silhouette beyond the glass catch the movement. Let them look. Let them wonder why the room felt larger with her in it. She pictured Owen striding through the front doors, civil tone sharpened to a lawyer's edge. Imagined the receptionist trying to decide whether to buzz him in fast or make him wait. He wouldn't raise his voice. He wouldn't need to. He'd bring documentation, precedent, patience measured in microns, and just enough contained fury to rearrange a room. Hold the line, she told herself. Almost there. Pike returned, carrying his swagger like luggage he couldn't set down. He slid into the chair, unsmiling for the first time. We're going to try something, he said. How about you walk me through exactly what you were doing at the vehicle? Looking for my purse, Marissa answered. Because? Because it holds my ID, my badge, and everything I need to prove who I am in under 60 seconds. He drummed fingers on the folder. You were late for something. A meeting, she said. Not that it's relevant to probable cause. His gaze hardened. See? When people are under pressure, they lie. They leave out details. They make mistakes. And when officers are under bias, she said, tone still controlled, they manufacture them. He sat back, careful. Likewise, she returned. The pause stretched taut, then snapped when a knock hit the door, brisk, unafraid. The older officer poked in again, a paper in his hand and an unreadable look on his face. He offered the sheet to Pike. You might want to see this. Pike scanned the page, jaw working. He didn't show it to Marissa. Is that it? He asked. For now, the older man said, eyes flicking to her with something like apology threaded through restraint. We're still confirming. The door closed. Pike folded the paper, creased and recreased it, then tucked it under the folder, awkward as if paper could be erased by pressure. Looks like someone made a few call, he said. People do that when the truth's easy to find, Marissa replied. Or when they're scared, he shot back. Of accountability? He leveled a stare, waited for her to blink, didn't get what he wanted, and broke eye contact first. The clock marked the surrender with a small, smug tick. Why do you do this job? She asked, unexpected even to herself. Pike's laugh was short, defensive. Because somebody has to keep order. Order without accuracy isn't order, she said. It's theater. He waved it off. Spoken like a politician. Spoken like a prosecutor who's watched systems fail honest people. He leaned forward, elbows on steel. You think a speech changes tonight? I think truth does. He rolled his eyes and stood. I'll be back when your savior gets here. He's not my savior, she said to the closing door. He's a witness. The hallway swallowed him. Marissa breathed, slow and metered, letting the oxygen sand the sharp corners off the moment. She thought of the parking lot's heat, the purse strap probably peeking from beneath the seat. She thought of the phrase, people like you, and felt the old steel lock into place. Not today. The young officer reappeared with another paper cup and a look that suggested he'd gone further than he was allowed. Ma'am, he said quietly, I I checked the database. He swallowed. The plate comes back to a Marissa Langford. The words hung in the air like a confession. Thank you, she said, gentle and sincere. Please document that you did. He nodded, nerves buzzing. I put it in the incident log. It'll be time-stamped. He hesitated, then added, I'm sorry. She held his gaze. Make it mean something. He left as quickly as he'd come, like a small truth that had to sprint past a larger lie. Marissa closed her eyes for just a heartbeat, not in relief. Relief was premature, but in acknowledgement. Facts had entered the building. Now they had to find the room. The mirror remained black and patient, as though it knew what was coming next. The door rattled, once, twice, and then was pushed open from the outside, with the kind of authority that doesn't need to announce itself. Pike stepped in first, irritation like static around him. Behind him, the older officer again, jaw set. We're going to sort this out, Pike said, not quite looking at her. That would be a first today, Marissa answered. The older man cut a glance at Pike. She's entitled to counsel. He's en route, Marissa said, and my vehicle registration is in the glove box. My insurance card is with it. Both bear my name. Pike's mouth flattened. We're aware. Act aware, she replied. Silence. The older officer sighed, the sound of something heavy being adjusted, and not yet moved. When your attorney arrives, Miss Langford, we'll proceed. You mean begin, she corrected. He didn't disagree. They left. The room felt bigger by an inch. She could feel the building shift, not the walls, but the posture of the place. Pace outside quickened. Words got clipped at the ends, like people were using fewer syllables to avoid saying the wrong thing aloud. Marissa sat with her back not touching the chair, curious how many tiny decisions had brought them to this exact outline of failure. The look in a parking lot, the refusal to check a fact, the way bias wears an officer's face like a mask and calls it vigilance. She thought of the training binders with their glossy value statements. She imagined writing a new one with a single line, run the plate first. Footsteps stopped outside the door. The handle turned. She didn't move. Not yet. When this cracked open, she wanted to be the first thing they saw, composed, unbroken, a living refutation of the story written for her without consent. It wasn't Owen. A lieutenant she didn't know stepped in, shoulders squared by habit. He introduced himself with his last name, clipped, and asked if she needed anything while they awaited developments. The law, she said. He didn't flinch. We're working on that. Work faster. He held the door a second longer than necessary, like he wanted to say more and decided not to. When he left, his scent of rain and old coffee lingered. Marissa pressed her palms flat to the table, absorbing the cool. She thought of her office window, the skyline from 14 floors up, the stack of motions waiting for her pen. She thought of her staff, how they would react when they learned where she'd been this afternoon and why. The clock stepped again. Outside, the front doors chimed. She didn't need a mirror to know Owen Carter had finally arrived. She heard his voice before she saw him, polite, precise, arranged to carry, without force. He did not raise the temperature of the hallway. He reorganized it. Footfalls paused, redirected. A receptionist's tone flipped from procedural to deferential. Pike's baritone cut in, defensive already. Owen's reply was silk wrapped around steel. A pause, then the thrum of phones dialing upward, someone alerting someone else who wore more braid. Marissa allowed herself one long exhale, then drew the room back around her like a well-cut suit. She would not stand when he walked in. She would not need to. She had not surrendered anything they could rightly take. The handle finally turned. Pike opened the door with a face that pretended he'd been expecting this all along. Owen followed, tall, composed, gray suit unrumpled by the day, his eyes landing on Marissa, taking inventory. Telegraphing, we're going to fix this now. Ms. Langford, Owen said, voice low enough to be personal and clear enough to be quoted. Are you all right? I am, she said, but we're burning sunlight. He nodded once, then addressed Pike without turning his shoulders. Officer, we're going to resolve this immediately. You have arrested the state attorney without probable cause, ignored readily available exculpatory facts, and violated basic procedure. Pike bristled. She. Stop, Owen said, not loud, but with a command that made the air refocus. You will either run the plate, check the glove box, and compare signatures, or I'll call the chief and the civilian oversight chair, and we'll do this in a larger room. The older officer hovered in the doorway listening. Pike's jaw worked. We're verifying. You're late to the verb, Owen replied. Start with release. Then we can discuss remediation and record correction. Pike tried a different route. She was inside a vehicle without ID. That's suspicious. You made it suspicious, Owen said softly. You manufactured suspicion out of a stereotype and your impatience, and even if that weren't true, the plate would have resolved the question in under a minute. He shifted just enough to include the older officer with a professional nod. Sergeant, for the record, Ms. Langford requested a plate check repeatedly. She asked you to verify registration. She requested counsel. The longer this persists, the harder it will be to characterize it as anything other than willful. The older man's eyes flicked to Marissa, then to Pike. Run it now, he told Pike, voice flat. Pike hesitated a fraction, then stepped back into the hall. Owen moved closer to Marissa's chair, not touching the table. Breathe, he said very quietly. I am, she answered. Keep sharpening. Voices collided outside, quick and brittle. Database pings, a whispered, oh, a chair leg scrape. The younger officer appeared, breath slightly high. He held a printout like a truce flag. Plate registers to Marissa Langford, he said, clearer this time. Insurance matches, VIN matches. There's also a parking pass on file for the courthouse garage under her name. He set the paper on the table, sliding it toward Owen, but his eyes found Marissa. Gratitude flickered there, a recognition of the line he'd chosen. Pike re-entered on the tail of the statement, face set to neutral and failing. Owen didn't gloat. Release her, he said, and bring the property from the vehicle. The purse, specifically. Pike's nostrils flared. We'll need... No, Owen said. What you need is to stop compounding a mistake. The older officer's silence turned heavy. Uncuff her, he said. Document everything, all of it. The cuffs were unlocked and lifted, cold impressions blooming on Marissa's wrists like pale bracelets. She flexed her hands, returning blood and ownership to each fingertip, then set them on the table, still grounded, deliberate. Pike stared past her at the mirror. You'll sign for release, he muttered. We'll process the paperwork. Owen's lips compressed. You'll correct the record, he said. Expunge the arrest, annotate the log with the verification timeline, and note that Ms. Langford requested reasonable checks repeatedly and was denied. You will also provide your body cam footage and any audio from this room upon formal request. Pike's eyes sparked. Are you threatening? No, Owen said. I'm reciting. The younger officer glanced between them, then stepped out to retrieve the purse. Marissa sat taller. 2 minutes, she said softly, half to herself. That's all this ever needed. Owen nodded. We're going to make sure everyone remembers that. The purse arrived. Black leather. Familiar weight. Carried in like evidence and set down like apology. Marissa opened it, pulled her wallet, and produced her ID and her badge in one smooth motion. She placed both on the table, with the gentle finality of a gavel. Owen rotated the badge so every letter faced the room. Pike's mask cracked at the edges. The older officer read, swallowed, and straightened his shoulders as if the upholstery demanded better posture. Ms. Langford, he said, we regret the inconvenience. Owen's eyebrow went up a fraction. We'll choose a different noun, he said. Marissa slid the ID back into her wallet, the badge into its pocket. We're done here, she said, but left the sentence open for the postscript they both knew was coming. Pike scraped together papers he no longer trusted. The clock ticked, unconcerned, into the next minute, as if ceremonially turning a page. I want the incident number, Owen said. All involved officers' names and badge numbers, and a copy of the initial arrest statement before it is amended. The older officer nodded. You'll have it. Good, Owen said, because we'll be filing a complaint with Internal Affairs, forwarding a report to the Oversight Board, and making a formal request for retraining focused on pretextual stops and confirmation bias. Pike blew out a breath that wanted to be a scoff and didn't make it. You're making a lot of noise over nothing. Marissa stood then, slow, precise, not asking permission, and the room recalibrated to her height. Over nothing, she said. You turned a purse search into a felony. You turned my face into your evidence. You turned procedure into performance. There will be accountability. The young officer reappeared with a form. His hands were steadier now. Incident number, he offered, and I logged the plate check. Owen tucked the form into his folio. We'll be requesting footage from the lot too, he said. Pike's jaw ticked. You think you're going to ruin my career? Owen let the question sit until it lost some heat. I think we're going to improve your department, he said. Whether you come out better is up to you. The older officer cleared his throat. Ms. Langford, if you'll step to the desk, we'll finalize release. The word rang like an understudy for freedom, useful, not complete. Marissa gathered her things. The purse felt heavier now, as if it had absorbed the afternoon. Owen held the door for her. She didn't move yet. She looked at Pike. There's a world, she said, where you could have been the one to fix this in 2 minutes. You chose a different world. That's going in the record, too. For once, he didn't have a comeback. The hallway was brighter than she remembered. Officers looked up as she passed, some curious, some chastened, most careful. At the desk, a clerk slid forms across polished laminate. Owen scanned them, circled a line, and pushed them back. Change detained to wrongfully arrested, then add the verification sequence. The clerk's pen hesitated, then moved. Marissa signed where accuracy permitted. She kept her signature clean, unslashed by the day. The young officer, she still didn't know his name, hovered at a respectful distance. Thank you, she told him, not as absolution, but as assignment. Next time, start with the check. He nodded, relief washing some color back into his face. Owen's phone buzzed. He silenced it without looking. We'll debrief outside, he said quietly. Not done here. I know, she answered. The desk light glinted off a brass badge. The building exhaled like a tired animal. Papers stamped, signatures applied, the last click sounded. A drawer shutting them out of custody. Marissa adjusted the strap on her shoulder and felt the familiar weight settle into its rightful place. Owen guided toward the exit with a half step, letting her set the pace. The lobby doors opened on air cooler than the room had promised. She stood just beyond, under a city sky trimmed with late sun, and inhaled something that didn't taste like fluorescent light. Owen waited a beat. You want statements to press? He asked. Not yet, she said. I want the record perfect first. Then I want policy. Then we can decide who needs to read about it. He nodded, unsurprised. We'll file tonight. She glanced back through the glass at silhouettes moving in practiced patterns. They'll circle the wagons, he said. They can build a fort, she replied. We'll bring daylight. Footsteps gathered behind the lobby glass. The older officer, no longer hovering, now accompanied by a man with command born into his bones, pushed through the doors. The sergeant was tall, broad, hair gone to gray in the way of men who've worn the same hat through 100 storms. His expression was measured, not yet apologetic, already aware. He took in the scene in a sweep, Marissa upright and unbowed, Owen quiet and sharpened, Pike lingering at a distance, scowl leaking bravado. The sergeant stepped forward, hand hovering near a handshake he hadn't earned. His eyes found Marissa's, and something like fatigue and resolve stood there together. Ms. Langford, he said, voice rough with long service, I'm Sergeant Halverson. I understand there's been a situation? Owen's mouth ticked. Marissa didn't blink. The sergeant's gaze slid to Pike, then back, posture saying what his words hadn't yet. He knew something had already gone very wrong. Gubam had gone very wrong. Marissa straightened as Sergeant Halverson flicked a glance from her to Owen. He cleared his throat, voice firm. All right, let's get the facts on the table. He nodded toward Marissa. Ms. Langford, I'm told you were detained on suspicion of auto theft. Accurate? Yes, she said, calm and controlled. I also told Officer Pike repeatedly that I'm the state attorney and that this is my vehicle. He refused to check my ID or verify anything. Halverson turned to Pike, expression hardening. That right? You didn't confirm her identity? Pike shifted, clinging to his defense. She said she didn't have ID, claimed she lost her purse. I followed protocol based on what I saw. Owen stepped forward, voice precise. No, you didn't. You never ran the plate, never checked the glove box, ignored every detail she offered, including her office. You profiled her and escalated what never needed escalation. She had no ID, Pike insisted, jaw set. I can't just take people at their word. We deal with liars all the time. Halverson raised a hand, cutting through the protest. Enough! This isn't about whether she physically held ID. It's about whether you verified in any other way. Did you run the plate? Did you check registration? Did you do a background lookup? Silence tightened. Pike looked away, then muttered, No. Marissa watched the admission land, frustration steady beneath composure. She'd offered every off-ramp. He'd chosen none. Owen's voice rose enough to leave marks. And when I arrived, you still dismissed who she is. You mocked her. That's not negligence. That's reckless. Halverson's eyes narrowed on Pike, whose crossed arms had turned into crossed wires. You need to learn how to do this job thoroughly, the sergeant said. You didn't. And now the state attorney was detained on a baseless charge. Pike scowled, the room's gravity no longer his. I was doing my job, he muttered, smaller now. Marissa finally spoke, voice crisp with earned ice. No, you were abusing your authority. You saw me and made a judgment without evidence. You ignored every word because you didn't believe someone like me could hold this position. Pike's eyes snapped to hers, anger flickering, but he stayed quiet. Halverson sighed, then turned back to Marissa. Ms. Langford, on behalf of this precinct, I'm sorry for how this was handled. We'll release you immediately. This will be reviewed. She kept her gaze on Pike. I appreciate that. But this isn't over. There will be consequences on behalf of everyone who's been treated like this and didn't have the power to push back. Silence deepened, carrying the weight of what she'd said. Halverson nodded once. Understood. I'll see to it personally. Owen's hand hovered like reassurance at her shoulder. Marissa rose, ready to leave, then looked back at Pike. Her tone turned quiet, surgical. You should have listened when I told you who I was. Next time, check facts before you judge. Pike didn't answer. His jaw knotted, fists flexed uselessly at his sides. He still couldn't swallow the truth, even as it stood in front of him, unbroken. She walked out with Owen, a cold satisfaction threading through her steps. Not vengeance, precision, justice, for now, lived where her feet carried it. But she knew the work wasn't done. Bigger battles waited outside this room. The next morning, she'd come back on her own terms. The corridor released them into cooler air. Owen opened the lobby door. She paused at the threshold, a lawyer stepping back into her jurisdiction. We'll be filing tonight, he said. We'll also build the record. She nodded once. Then we'll build the scaffolding that changes the next day. Dawn burned off the previous afternoon's heat, but determination stayed. Marissa returned to the station not as a detainee or a cautionary example, but as the state attorney with work to do. The prior day's humiliation sat somewhere behind her, cataloged, admissible, but couldn't distract from the agenda ahead. In a conference room that smelled of whiteboard ink and spent coffee, the police chief waited at the head of the table. Chief Rafael Moreno, tall, unsmiling, hair clipped to regulation, folded his hands. Pike sat to the side, posture tense, bravado thinned. He looked up, discomfort flickering, before the same hard mask dropped into place. This time the room did not bend around him. Marissa greeted the chief with a clipped nod, settled across from Pike, and let composure fill the space he used to claim. The quiet thickened, the kind that precedes a sworn statement. She didn't need a speech. She needed consequences. Chief Moreno cleared his throat, voice even, but lined with fatigue. Ms. Langford, first, on behalf of the department, I'm issuing a formal apology. I've reviewed the incident. Procedure was not followed. This will be taken seriously. Marissa met his gaze, unreadable. I appreciate the apology, Chief, but apologies don't alter the facts. Your officer profiled me, refused to verify basic information, and escalated an encounter that required 2 minutes of checks. Pike shifted, jaw tight, eyes forward. Moreno glanced at him, then continued. We're placing Officer Pike on leave, without pay, pending a full investigation. Marissa nodded slightly but kept her sights on the larger frame. That's a start. This isn't just about me. It's about how many people like me get treated the same way without the platform to fight back. The table absorbed her words, steady as stone. Moreno listened. The silence after sounded like the first page turning. Pike finally spoke, voice low, defensive, around the edges. I didn't know who you were, okay? If I'd known. Marissa's eyebrow cut him off. That's exactly the point. You shouldn't treat people differently because of who they are. You follow procedure for everyone. You didn't. You saw a black woman searching her own car and assumed the worst. He opened his mouth, found nothing useful, closed it. Moreno stepped in, tone firm. Officer Pike, you were wrong. The investigation will determine consequences. Pike clenched his fists against the table. I made a judgment call based on what I saw. You made a call rooted in bias, Marissa said, carving through his sentence. You ignored multiple opportunities to verify the truth. That's not judgment, that's prejudice in a uniform. Heat rose in Pike's face. He swallowed whatever came next. Procedure finally had the floor. It had been waiting since the parking lot. Ms. Langford is correct, Moreno said, voice leveling. This department has no room for actions like this. It's not a one-off mistake. It exposes something systemic. Marissa accepted the acknowledgement with a small nod, but didn't soften. You should be sorry for the harm, she added, eyes on Pike. Not because it happened to me. He glanced up, resentment flickering, then dropped his stare back to the table. Moreno concluded, effective immediately, you're on leave. We'll implement mandatory training addressing bias and escalation. Marissa rose. I'll be back when the investigation concludes, she said, calm as verdict. If we discover a pattern, it won't stop at training. Pike stayed mute. Moreno stood and walked Marissa to the door. Thank you for confronting this, he said. It won't be taken lightly. I hope so, Chief, she replied. For your city's sake. The hallway received her with morning light and an agenda. Another day, heavier air. Marissa returned with Owen beside her, his gray suit carrying the kind of quiet pressure that rearranges rooms. The investigation had moved quickly. The stakes had grown taut. In Moreno's office, blinds were half closed, sun cross-hatching the desk. Pike sat cornered by consequence. The kinetic arrogance burned off. Marissa and Owen took seats across from the chief, composed, prepared. Moreno folded his hands again, expression fixed. Ms. Langford, Mr. Carter, he said, we've completed our preliminary review. Officer Pike's actions violated department procedure and policy. Effective immediately, his employment is terminated. Pike's hands gripped the chair arms, his lips thinned to a pale line. Words failed him. Marissa glanced at him once, then back to Moreno. That response was necessary, she said. It isn't sufficient. Owen added, level and unblinking. The system that enabled the failure must be corrected, not just the individual who personified it. Moreno nodded slowly. Agreed. We're launching a department-wide review. Training, supervision, and stop protocols, especially around pretext and confirmation bias. We'll bring in outside consultants. This won't be a checkbox exercise. Marissa leaned in, focus sharp. This isn't only about training, it's cultural. It's how default suspicion attaches to bodies like mine. I want change that lives beyond memos, how your officers actually move in the world. Moreno held her gaze. Understood. We're committed. She listened a beat longer, testing the weight of those words. Plenty of rooms had promised reform. Too few delivered. Owen cleared his throat, professional and warning in equal parts. We'll monitor. If progress stalls, we'll return with remedies. Moreno's jaw set. You'll get regular updates. Marissa turned to Pike, not for apology, but to serve the record. You had a choice that day. You chose bias. The consequences are yours. The harm belongs to all of us. Pike looked up, face drained, then away. He gathered breath like a shield, found it thin, and let it drop. Moreno ended it cleanly. Officer Pike, you're dismissed. Collect your belongings. Pike stood, stiffness hiding the shake in his posture, and left without a word. The door's soft click released a sliver of pressure from the room. For Marissa, weight remained. Gravity doesn't vanish when a nameplate does. She faced Moreno. I'll be watching closely, she said. Termination addresses this instance. I'm interested in the architecture that let it happen. He nodded. We want the same outcome, justice and accountability. She rose. Owen followed. At the threshold, she paused. This is one officer, she said softly. One incident. The system is still broken. Fixing it will take more than a firing. Moreno's solemn nod carried the load of command. We'll try not to waste the chance this failure created. The city's edge brightened as they left, the sun sliding up, casting long, honest shadows. It felt like a victory, but victory wasn't the right word. Precision was better. A step, properly placed. One brick removed from a heavy wall. Over the next week, the story refused to fade. In her office, 14 floors up, Marissa watched traffic braid and unbraid beneath her window and weighed what progress should look like. Pike was out. The department had promised reforms. But the machinery that produced yesterday could still produce tomorrow. Her phone vibrated. Chief Moreno. She answered with courtroom calm. He sounded formal, but the tightness had eased. We've begun implementing the new protocols, he said. Consultants are setting bias and escalation curricula. I'd like to offer you a seat on the oversight committee to keep us honest. She absorbed the invitation, weighing sincerity against precedent, urgency against optics. I appreciate the offer, Chief, she said. That's a step, but I won't be a prop. If I join, it's to make sure the work actually gets done, and done right. He paused, a breath on the line. Understood. This is more than appearances. Your insight would help. She considered. I'll think about it. They ended the call. She set the phone down and stood, pacing along the window's edge. Promises had a half-life she knew too well. Press conferences came easy. Follow-through required a spine. She'd seen reforms degrade into slogans. She watched sunlight crawl the opposite wall and let the skepticism exist beside her duty. Firing one officer couldn't absolve a system that recruited, trained, and rewarded him. She thought about the community forums she'd started to host, small rooms, folding chairs, story after story that mirrored her own. Pattern recognition isn't cynicism. It's how you find the right levers. A knock broke her loop. Owen stepped in, reading the room without being told. He sat across from her. He called? He did, she said. They're moving. He wants me on the oversight committee. Owen nodded, unsurprised. You considering it? I am and I'm not. Her mouth tilted in something not quite a smile. Part of me wants to be inside the work to keep it from turning into a PR campaign. Part of me is bone tired of hearing the same promises. Owen leaned forward, tone gentle, spine steel. You've always known the road is uphill. You're in a rare position to force alignment between talk and action. She looked back at the window. I want this to be real, not ceremonial. Then make it real, he said. Bring the pressure with you. She exhaled, thought of those folding chairs, and felt something settle. If I join, I'm bringing the city with me. She typed the message before her resolve could cool. Chief, I'll take the seat. On conditions. The committee will incorporate community testimony, publish timelines, and commit to measurable outcomes. We're not here for half measures. She hit send and sat back as purpose replaced fatigue. The work ahead would be long, but time moves the same speed, no matter how much you carry. Owen rose, sensing the shift. Right call, he said. I'll stand in your corner. I know, she answered. After he left, she stayed at the desk, sketching a plan that would tie yesterday to tomorrow, policy to practice, training to the street. The small victories of the last week were not endpoints, they were footings. The system wouldn't change in a news cycle, but it would change in increments if someone kept score. She intended to. Brick by brick, case by case, she'd unbuild what shouldn't have been built. She listed first steps in a legal pad that had seen grand juries and late night strategies. 1. Audit stop data by race, neighborhood unit. 2. Require plate first verification prompts in the CAD system. 3. Mandatory scenario rework, de escalation prioritized over possession of a hunch. 4. Supervisory sign off on detentions lacking initial verification with written rationale. 5. Body cam spot checks, randomized weekly with public summaries. 6. Early warning system for officers with patterns of complaints. 7. Community listening sessions translated into policy revisions. She added timelines, owners, and a promise to herself. Publish metrics, win or lose. A separate page became street level fixes, car side checklists, roll call reminders, watch commanders accountable for compliance. She drew a line from the parking lot to a box that read, 2 minutes, underline, underline. Policy should encode common sense. In her mind, she could hear Pike's scoff, then the silence that followed verification. Communications mattered. She drafted a press framework that thread the needle, firm about failure, careful not to poison ongoing cases, centered on community experience. She phoned a neighborhood liaison she trusted and scheduled forums at 3 different sites: the rec center on Jackson, the church basement on 3rd, the library on Maple. She asked for simultaneous Spanish and Vietnamese interpretation. Justice belongs in every language spoken on your block. She pinged Owen about a pro bono evening clinic for people with old stop related citations, not to relitigate, but to counsel and connect. She assembled a small advisory group: a public defender, a retired captain who turned reformer, a youth organizer, a statistician with receipts. She emailed Moreno a draft oversight charter with teeth, sunset dates, deliverables, public dashboards. Her phone buzzed. The chief. Agreed to most. Let's meet tomorrow. She circled yes on her calendar, then wrote, Don't let logistics blunt urgency. The first oversight session met in a municipal conference room that tried to look welcoming and failed. Fluorescents hummed above a U-shaped table. Moreno brought 2 deputies and a city attorney. The consultants, one behavioral scientist, one former federal monitor, sat with tablets open, eyes sharp. Marissa arrived with binders and a list, placing a photo of a license plate at the center like a thesis. We're not reinventing the wheel, she said, opening. We're deciding whether it turns. She outlined objectives: reduce pretextual detentions, bake verification into muscle memory, measure outcomes that matter. The consultants nodded, chiming in about cognitive load and bias interrupters. The city attorney asked about liability. Owen answered with case law and carrots sharpened into sticks. Moreno listened more than he spoke. Good start. A deputy floated concerns about morale. Marissa countered with safety. Fewer bad stops mean fewer volatile encounters. The room's temperature lowered into work. At the academy, she watched a scenario play where a trainee treated no visible ID like a green light for cuffs. Marissa raised a hand, stopped the clock. What did you verify? The recruit stammered. The instructor, an old hand, looked sheepish. Run the plate, Marissa said. Check registration. Ask questions that aren't accusations. Then decide. They rewound. The recruit did it over, this time narrating verification, while a trainer fed realistic system responses. The outcome changed, The temperature dropped. Marissa asked the class to write a one-sentence rule on index cards. She collected: plate first, verify first, facts before force. She taped the phrases on the whiteboard and snapped a photo. Later, she sat with the curriculum team and rewrote 3 drills, swapping gotcha traps for judgment calls with built-in off-ramps. "We're not training lawyers," she said. "We're training truth seekers." Someone chuckled. "Put that on the patch." Community night at the rec center packed more chairs than fire code liked. Marissa didn't open with a podium. She opened with a circle. People spoke. An older man described being pulled over 3 times in a month on the same block. A student told how her brother still flinched at sirens. A nurse said she keeps her badge on the dashboard to ward off assumptions. A mother cried through a story about her son and a traffic stop that turned into a ride to booking for a taillight she could prove worked. Marissa listened, took notes, and when someone asked what would change, she answered plainly: metrics, training, supervision, and consequences. Then we show you the numbers. She invited complaints, handed out clinic flyers, and promised to follow up. Afterward, a teen in a hoodie said, "You didn't talk around us." She said, "You talked. We'll write it down." The union showed up next, predictably wary. In a cramped office with a slanted bookshelf, the rep laid out concerns about witch hunts. Marissa didn't blink. "Accountability and process aren't opposites," she said. "Due process means we separate mistake from misconduct. It doesn't mean we hide patterns." She offered common ground: better training, clearer rules, fewer ambiguous calls in the field. "You want officers safe," she said. "So do I. Plate first reduces volatility. Body cam spot checks protect the good as much as they catch the bad." The rep tested her tone, found no appetite for grandstanding, and recalibrated. They agreed on early warning thresholds with mandatory coaching before discipline, and on an appeals process that focused on facts, not favors. "If this works," the rep said reluctantly, "it helps us too." "That's the idea," she said, standing. "Good policy isn't anti-cop, it's anti-chaos. Tech could hardwire better habits." She met with the CAD vendor in a bland conference room where all innovation goes to nap and insisted on prompts that forced verification before detention. The engineer frowned at legacy constraints. She supplied use cases and workarounds, then found grant money to prototype. 2 weeks later, a pilot rolled out to 3 districts. Dispatch flashed "run plate, verify REG" in bold before authorizing a field unit status change to detain. Supervisors saw compliance dashboards. Early numbers trickled in: fewer detentions, shorter stops, lower complaint volume. Not proof, not yet, but signal. She paired it with a weekly stop review, where sergeants selected random body cam clips, praised best practices out loud, and corrected misses without public shaming. She told Moreno to recognize the good on roll call as loudly as they discipline the bad. Culture shifts where the incentives live. The memo, short, unflinching, went out. Midpoint review in the same municipal room felt different: less defensiveness, more spreadsheets. Moreno opened with early data: wrongful detentions down 13% in pilot areas, average stop duration trimmed by 90 seconds, complaints about discourtesy dipped. Marissa didn't let the room exhale too far. "This is a floor, not a ceiling," she said. "We need persistence." The consultants flagged a gap. Night shift compliance lagged. A deputy promised a graveyard roll call push. The city attorney asked about litigation exposure. Owen answered with a graph correlating fewer bad stops with fewer payouts. Marissa laid out next steps: expand the pilot, publish a public dashboard, and institute a 2-minute drill. Every patrol car runs a weekly plate registration simulation with a supervisor grading. Someone asked about Pike. "Internal affairs wrapped," Moreno said quietly. "Referral sent to post for decertification." Marissa nodded once. Accountability wasn't vengeance. It was a map others could follow. She spoke to cadets on a rain-streaked afternoon, the academy gym smelling like rubber and resolve. "You'll be told your job is control," she opened. "It's not. Your job is truth. Control is a tactic. Truth is the point. She let the silence hang, then continued. The fastest path isn't always the right one. 2 minutes can save 2 months of paperwork, a lawsuit, or a life. Verify, ask, listen, then act. She didn't give them her story. She gave them a framework. A recruit asked how to hold a partner accountable without getting iced out. You make it about the rule, not the person, she said, and you document. Heads tilted thinking. The training chief later asked if she'd record that talk for roll calls. I'll do it live when I can, she said. Policy is words. Culture is repetition. She left them with index cards. Plate first. Late night. Office lights low. The city a constellation beyond the glass. Doubt crept in like fog, not loud but insistent. Was any of this enough? Could a handful of memos and modules rewire the reflexes of 1,000 officers shaped by 1,000 days? Her phone lit. Owen, go home, he said. You don't have to keep the whole department upright by yourself. She smiled despite herself. You calling to make sure I eat? I'm calling to make sure you sleep. Progress is a marathon with depositions at mile markers. She leaned back, letting the chair take some weight. We've got numbers, she said. Not victory, but numbers. Numbers make policies sticky, he replied. And the story you're writing isn't just yours. She stared at the skyline until the doubt thinned. I'll leave when I finish this memo, she said. I'll drive you, he said. I already parked. The policy memo landed the next morning. Plain language, sharp edges. Subject, verification first enforcement. It required plate registration checks prior to detention absent exigent circumstances, mandated body cam narration of verification steps, and established supervisor review when exceptions were claimed. It attached a 2-page quick guide for patrol officers, flowchart, radio scripts, examples. Marissa presented it to the oversight committee. The vote was unanimous. Moreno signed a department order aligning with the memo. The city posted a public-facing summary that didn't hide behind jargon. Press calls followed. Marissa gave one on-record interview, careful to center community voices and not turn herself into the headline. This isn't about me, she said. It's about preventing the next wrong stop. She declined television. She preferred town halls and written statements to camera lights. Focus always on the habit, not the person. That's how you someday forget the name Pike. Quarter's end brought the first dashboard. Stops by district, detentions after verification, exceptions invoked. The charts weren't fireworks, but they beat darkness. We'll publish monthly, Marissa said at the committee. We'll add discipline tallies when privacy permits. Moreno reported internal wins: a sergeant who built his own roll call module on bias interrupters, a lieutenant who created commendations for textbook stops, a rookie who reminded a senior officer to run the plate first and did it on body cam without snark. Not every story glowed. Night shift had improved but still lagged. One precinct balked at the new narratives. The union rep grumbled, then admitted sick calls hadn't spiked. Marissa proposed a ride-along schedule. If you want culture, you ride in the culture. Owen flagged funding for expanding the CAD prompts citywide. The city attorney nodded toward grant opportunities. The room, once brittle, had turned into a workshop. Grocery store line, rain jacket hood half up. A voice behind her. Ma'am. She turned. The younger officer from the station, without the clipboard, without the tremor, stood with a basket and a cautious smile. I wanted to say, I'm the one who ran your plate that day. I logged it. I got heat for it. He swallowed. But the sergeant backed me, and, I just made field training officer. Marissa felt something warm thread through the fatigue. Congratulations, she said. You did the right thing? He nodded, eyes shining with something like relief. We had a stop last week. My trainee started to cuff. I said, pause, plate first. We verified. We let the man go with an apology. He hesitated. I thought you should know. She nodded once more. I'm glad you told me. He shifted his basket. Thank you, he said, and meant the bigger thing. Keep the rule alive, she answered. Town hall in the church basement drew tough questions. A woman asked why they should trust data collected by the same agency that caused harm. Marissa didn't dodge. We'll cross check with independent analysts, she said, and we'll publish raw files with privacy safeguards. A man demanded to know why Pike wasn't in jail. Owen explained the criminal threshold and the administrative process without lawyering them to sleep. A pastor asked for a restorative circle for officers who wanted to hear directly from those harmed. Marissa said yes with ground rules. Someone shouted about budgets. Moreno, who'd come quietly and sat in the back, stood to say training dollars prevent lawsuit dollars and broken neighborhoods. The room stayed skeptical, which was honest. Afterward, a grandmother pressed Marissa's hand. I'm not forgiving, she said. I'm watching. Marissa nodded. Good. Keep us honest. Outside, rain brightened the streetlights into halos. The next oversight meeting faced its first official pushback. The union filed a memo calling the verification narration performative paperwork. Marissa came armed with patrol voices. A veteran wrote, narration protects me and the citizen. It slows me down in the right way. A rookie. It keeps my brain from sprinting ahead of facts. Moreno, to his credit, read both into the record. The consultants presented preliminary analysis. The 2-minute drill correlated with fewer use of force incidents. The city attorney, once cautious, now pointed to reduced settlement exposure. The vote to make the pilot permanent passed. Marissa watched the room settle into its new spine. Afterwards, she walked the precinct halls with Halverson. He'd gotten grayer at the temples. How's it playing? She asked. Like anything worth doing, he said. Some grumble, some get it, a few are already better for it. They stood outside the room where it began and breathed. She addressed her own staff next. The state attorney's office issued internal guidance, declination presumptions for cases originating in unlawful stops, charging decisions to note verification compliance, plea offers to factor officer credibility metrics. Some ADAs balked. She listened, then held the line. We are not potted plants, Rusts, she said. We shape what justice looks like before and after a courtroom. She created a review panel that included a public defender and a community representative to flag patterns in police reports. It wasn't popular everywhere. It didn't need to be. That night, alone in her kitchen, she let the quiet in. Doubt again asked its questions. She answered by pulling the first index card from her purse, plate first, and setting it against the salt shaker like a lighthouse. Owen texted a photo, the Academy whiteboard, your words still taped. She replied with a period. Enough said. Tomorrow's agenda hovered, patient. By month's end, the portal went live, a public dashboard with stop data, audit summaries, and policy documents written in English that didn't require a law degree. Privacy mattered, transparency mattered more. The first week saw a surge in clicks and a spike in emails, some angry, some appreciative, most curious. A local paper ran a balanced piece. A talk radio host ran a predictably unbalanced one. Marissa gave one more interview, careful, scripted only where it needed to be, clear where it couldn't be fuzzy. This isn't a victory lap, she said. It's a first mile marker. A mother from the rec center emailed to say her son had been stopped and released after a plate check with an apology. He didn't shake for hours after, but he didn't get cuffed, she wrote. Marissa read it twice. Progress doesn't erase pain. It keeps it from repeating on schedule. Quarter 2. The new dashboard showed detentions after verification up, exceptions down, and complaint rates continuing a slow tilt in the right direction. A precinct commander who'd resisted early came around after seeing his district's numbers improve. He sent a roll call note that read, Facts first isn't soft, it's strong. Marissa pushed for the next rung. Expand CAD prompts citywide, install in-car training modules, and require quarterly refresher drills. She met with IT about building a discipline transparency portal with redactions that protected privacy without hiding consequence. They argued in good faith over where the line lived. We'll start with aggregate numbers, she said, then case studies with consent. The union rep rolled his eyes. then offered to co-author a guidance on language that didn't impugn entire units. Compromise is not surrender if the rule survives intact. She kept watching night shift metrics. Culture sleeps late. She'd wake it. In a coffee shop, the retired captain turned reformer slid into a chair with a folder. "You're moving things," she said, practical pride behind the words. "But watch the middle management. That's where change either sets or slides." Marissa nodded. "We're adding evaluation metrics for supervisors, compliance rates, coaching quality, body cam review participation." The captain grinned. "Tie it to promotions." "Already drafted," Marissa said. Later, she met a youth organizer who wanted to add Know Your Rights sessions at schools. "Yes," Marissa said, "and we'll bring officers willing to listen, not lecture." She called Moreno with the idea. He agreed, cautiously optimistic. The next oversight meeting felt almost ordinary. Data, debate, decisions. Ordinary is where reform proves itself. She closed her binder, thought of the parking lot, the cuffs, the 2 minutes they didn't take. The city felt fractionally different. Not safer by magic, but safer by math and will. One afternoon, she walked back into Central Precinct for a scheduled training check-in. The walls hadn't changed, the hum hadn't either, but something had. She saw it in the way a sergeant corrected a rookie. Firm, not performative. She saw it on a bulletin board where someone had posted her index card rule next to a photo from the academy. In a hallway, the young officer, now wearing an FTO pin, caught her eye and offered a nod that said both thanks and keep pushing. In a training room, a lieutenant ran the 2 minute drill like a coach running routes. "Again," he said, "narrate it." They did. She timed them. Nobody minded. On the way out, she passed the door of the room where Pike had smirked and then unraveled. It was closed. Good. Some rooms belonged to the past. Outside, the street noise tumbled over itself. She lifted her face to the honest weather. Town Hall version 2 ran hotter. A man demanded names. Who got disciplined, who didn't. Marissa explained the limits without hiding behind them. "We're building a portal with summaries and numbers," she said. "Privacy isn't a shield. It's a line we draw to protect victims and due process." A woman asked why verification had to be policy at all. "Because the obvious needs teeth," Marissa said. Moreno attended again, this time at the front, not in the back. He took heat without flinching. Owen spoke once, briefly, to clarify an appeal procedure. Otherwise, he watched the community talk to itself. Afterward, a boy about 15 approached. "Do you think it'll matter when I start driving?" he asked. Marissa crouched to meet his eyes. "That's why we're doing it now," she said. He nodded, serious in a way that shouldn't have to be learned so young. She signed a flyer for him. The IT build-out meeting was the kind that eats afternoons, acronyms, constraints, sticky notes. Marissa held the line on usability. If a teacher can't read it after a long day, it fails. They mapped the portal, landing page with dashboards, a how stops should work explainer, and a what we do when they don't section. Case studies would be anonymized with timelines, outcomes, and policy references. Appeals would be tracked with aggregate results posted quarterly. The city attorney flagged legal landmines. They rephrased without gutting substance. The union rep pressed for context on exceptions. She agreed, sunlight should be accurate. Timeline, beta in 60 days, public release in 90. "We'll iterate," she said, "but it has to launch." As the meeting broke, Moreno pulled her aside. "You're getting us further than I thought possible this fast," he said. "Don't slow down," she replied. He didn't promise. He nodded. In her own house, she reviewed an internal memo she'd pushed through her office, charging guidelines that required prosecutors to note whether stops complied with verification policy. Cases born of unconstitutional detentions would face higher internal scrutiny. Dismissals would be explained publicly in aggregate. Some defense attorneys cheered, some officers bristled, some judges raised eyebrows, then lowered them. She also formalized a partnership with legal aid to help expunge records tied to bad stops. A philanthropist called about funding a small restitution pool for workdays. lost to wrongful detentions. She connected him to the oversight committee. After dinner, she opened emails, dozens, from residents telling small specific stories. The best ones were boring. They ran my plate, told me my tag light was out, and I went home. The worst ones, fewer now, still mattered. She forwarded them to Moreno with notes. Accountability isn't a press release, it's inbox work. It's A month later, she checked in on those who'd spoken at the first rec center night. The older man had one more stop. It ended with verification and a short conversation about neighborhood speeding. The nurse had started mentoring a cadet class about bedside tone and how it translates curbside. The mother's son had been accepted into a summer program. He still tensed at sirens, but he'd started biking again. She set up a monthly legal clinic at the library, staffed by volunteer attorneys Owen recruited from firms that needed to balance their ledgers with something truer than ours. She kept the committee agenda lean, one policy, one metric, one community voice each meeting. She pared back speeches and added checklists. The work felt less like crisis management and more like maintenance. Good, the city's pulse didn't change rhythm, it changed depth. She slept better, not always, more often. She returned to Central Precinct one more time. No cameras, no entourage, for a quiet sit down with Halverson and Moreno. The sergeant looked older, but lighter. Moreno carried a stack of reports half marked up. They reviewed numbers, snags, and a complaint that had turned into a commendation because an officer narrated verification so clearly the citizen emailed thanks. Halverson told her about a rookie who halted a detention mid-reach, saying, Sir, I haven't verified yet." Everyone froze, then exhaled. "He got it," Halverson said, pride tucked under his tone. Marissa listened, flagged 2 blind spots, and asked for a night shift ride-along next week. "Of course," Moreno said. She stood to leave. From the hallway, she could hear the desk sergeant laughing with someone about a lost dog reunited after a plate scan matched an owner. 2 minutes, she thought. It isn't magic. It's respect. On schedule. Every time. Outside the lobby, footsteps gathered. Halverson and Moreno joined her at the threshold. The sergeant's gaze took in the same picture as weeks ago. The state attorney, chin level, the lawyer nearby, not speaking unless needed, the patrol officer in the distance, no swagger, just work. "We started here because something went very wrong," Halverson said, voice roughened by memory and miles. "We're not done, but we're doing fewer wrong things." Moreno's eyes moved to the street, then back. "When this began, we were reacting," he said. "Now we're building." Marissa didn't offer comfort or censure. "Keep your promises," she said. "Keep the rule alive." Owen's quiet presence at her shoulder said everything else. The doors breathed shut behind them. Traffic rolled, honest as weather. Marissa stepped into the day with the same resolve she'd carried from the lot. Facts first, then force, if ever. The city could feel it.